Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the first of 6 tech webinars for Boston youth. These are for youth involved in the Boston Private Industry Council's Tech Apprentice program, and also youth who are involved in remote learning programs this summer. We're very excited to have you, and congratulations on the interns that started this week. We hope that it's been a good start for you. If we can go to the first slide. So we're excited today. We have a packed agenda. I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about the Boston tech economy at a high level. And then we're going to cut to Will from Burning Glass, who's going to let us know about skills for the future. And then the bulk of our program will be spent hearing from presenters from 3 different parts of the tech economy. From Shrenek from Wayfair, who's going to be walking us through e-commerce. Lee Green from Blue Cross. We'll be talking about fintech, and we'll end with Maria from Vertex and her experience working there and into the very interesting world of data science. We've also left a good block of time at the end for questions. This is a great opportunity for you as new folks new to tech or a little bit experience in tech to ask questions. You can write them in the chat, which I think is available, right, Ashley?
It sure is.
Yep. Or you can also raise your hand, or we'll put you on live. So I want to start out to spend a few minutes talking about the Boston tech economy at a very high level. Next slide. So we're very fortunate. We are in a real center of innovation and technology, both on a national and global basis here in Boston. It's a center, whether you're talking about emerging jobs or as an environment for starting a company. We have a very powerful combination of factors that make this a center for tech and innovation. We have a tremendous number of education institutions. We have dozens of colleges and universities, from Harvard to Emerson to MIT to Boston College and so on. There's also a tremendous amount of money being invested in technology through venture capital. And we have also a tremendous talent and company resources, as we'll talk more about. So this all combines to make a very attractive and dynamic market. Within the base of companies, there's a range of startup companies. These are new companies. Some may be only months old, making a little bit of money. We have sort of companies in the middle of their maturity, and then we have big established companies as well. So this all combines to help create a lot of energy and a lot of new talent and a lot of new investment in tech. As we'll talk a lot about, this is a leading metro for emerging jobs. When you're looking at things like data science and robotics and others, this is a key area for that. On the talent side of things, this is a really challenging time. There's a lot of discussion and a lot of focus and a lot of energy being put into building out more diversity within the workforce in tech, having the opportunities reach new communities, and then obviously of late, they've had to address the world of remote work and hiring. There are a great variety of tech companies within Boston, and there are jobs both within these companies, but also people who have skills and expertise and knowledge practice these areas within other companies. So for example, Lee will be talking about fintech and how that plays out within his company, and Maria will be talking about how machine learning and AI play out at Vertex. Just to call out a few of these that you may not have heard of, there's things like agriculture tech, ag tech. You may have heard of a company called Indigo in Charlestown, but there's a whole group of companies that specialize in the research, growing, harvest, and distribution of food, and that makes up ag tech. If we look at something like marketing tech, that's everything from companies like Drift that have chat bots. So when you go to a website and it says, "How can I help you?" that's coming from a company out of Boston. Companies in marketing tech also help create advertising strategies for online and analyze data about ad spending. In robotics, you've probably heard of companies like iRobot that produce robots to help clean your house. But there are many other aspects of robotics, ranging from robots that help to manufacture products to robots that help move goods around warehouses. You may have seen videos of those big, huge Amazon warehouses where robots are shepherding products for delivery. So again, a very rich set of tech companies within Boston that make it a very dynamic environment. And tech jobs make up a big chunk of the local economy. About 13% of the total workforce works in tech. And when we're talking about total jobs here, what we're talking about is all the people that work at tech companies. So not only those in technical professions, but the folks in sales and marketing and product. So we're including those in the number, and we're also including people who are self-employed. We're highly ranked in terms of the total number of people employed, and we continue to add jobs even in the last year. One important thing to stress, as you can see on the right, for tech occupations, and again, these are professional jobs, many of these jobs where things are being built, those that build, for example, software and websites, they work for tech companies. But when you get to other kinds of tech professions, those jobs that help support technology or are involved in cybersecurity or help run infrastructure, those jobs are within companies that are not tech companies. They are companies like Blue Cross, they are companies like Vertex and Life Sciences, they are government institutions, they are Harvard University, and so on. So a tremendous amount of the employment is not in tech companies, but is in the tech departments of other industries. Obviously, tech jobs pay pretty well. The tech occupations, right in the middle of the range, they pay, if you look at all the jobs together, they pay close to about $100,000 a year. Next slide. So just to highlight a little bit more about where the opportunities are going forward. These are some of the key occupations that we pay attention to in terms of advising students on different careers they might want to consider, and also direct them to different training and education opportunities. So depending on the job, it will require a different level of education for entry. So for example, in the fast-growing arena of software developers for applications, that typically requires a bachelor's degree. On the other hand, for a web developer, you maybe only need an associate's degree. And if you're looking at getting into tech through something like computer user support, that may involve some college and no degree. We work with, for example, local nonprofit boot camps that can train adults in a matter of 3 or 4 months to gain skills that can get them employed as computer support specialists. And finally, I wanted to touch briefly on the issue of diversity in tech. Again, this is a very current issue that a lot of people are talking about. There's a tremendous amount of dialogue going on. There's investment, there's activity trying to move this issue forward. And it has to do with the fact that we're trying to make the tech workforce more diverse. So for example, 5% of tech workers in Massachusetts are Black, 7% are Latinx, and 30% are women. The numbers for Black and Latinx workers have gotten better, but there's definitely a lot more focus on improving this and making a much more diverse workforce. In several weeks from now, we're actually going to have one of our webinars devoted to discussing this issue. We have a number of young female women of color who will be discussing their experiences getting into tech, so you may want to join us for that. So with that, that concludes my coverage of the overview of the tech economy, and I would like to bring Will into the discussion. Will leads the emerging technologies and human capital management practice at Burning Glass, where he oversees that company's research and consulting efforts focused on the impact of emerging tech on the workforce. He's quoted quite often because of his research in places like the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal. He's done a lot of consulting, major consulting for big companies and big public organizations. He's also advised multiple White House administrations on the future of work. One area he has a lot of expertise in is cybersecurity, workforce issues and research. He's internationally recognized as a commentator in this area. And he also helped build a very cool online interactive tool that I've used called cyberseek.org. So it's my pleasure to bring Will into our discussion.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Bruce. It's great to be here and really excited to share some of the insights that that we have from Burning Glass on the Boston tech economy. If we jump into some of those slides, I have to start to speak to them. But just to give you some background on Burning Glass, you know, we are a software company that is based in Boston, and we are both a tech company, and we have the fun role of getting to analyze the broader tech economy and the tech jobs within Boston and across the world. And so some of the key questions that my team asks relate to what are the impacts of new technologies and innovation on the workforce and on the jobs and skills that are available. And I think living here in Boston, we have a very clear view of how technology is good. It can benefit many people by improving productivity. It can bolster innovation and create new products that solve key challenges from healthcare to production and manufacturing and many other fields. And it really can have a great benefit to society. But if we jump to the next slide, we can also see that there are some downsides to new technologies. It may benefit many people, but it also can have a very disruptive impact on the workforce. New jobs are created, but also some jobs might be automated, and the people who are in those positions will need to find new jobs and new skills in order to remain relevant in their careers. And so one of the key things that we see is that new technologies, while they can be hugely beneficial, they also can create winners and losers when it comes to the job market. And so if we jump to the next slide, the main goal then is for individuals to be able to stay ahead of that technology curve and be able to see few years into the future as best they can and say, what are those new emerging fields that you should be investing in, that you should be learning skills in order to remain relevant and in order to make sure that you find yourself in the winners column and when it comes to new technologies. And at Burning Glass, all of the work that we do is really aimed at helping to understand what are some of those emerging fields, whether it's AI, IoT, big data, cybersecurity, or any of those fields that we hear a lot about and become fancy buzzwords, but we want to cut through a lot of that and try to understand what are the skill sets and the jobs that are going to be the best bets for you to invest in order to make sure that you have a sustainable career within those fields. And so if we jump to the next slide, can speak to how we do that. So at Burning Glass, as I mentioned, we're a software company. We're also an analytics company that leverages big data to better understand the workforce. And we have two primary data sets that we use to understand what jobs and skills are growing or declining within the workforce. The first is we look at online job descriptions. We are spidering we're going to about 50,000 different websites. We pull down job postings from those websites every day and then run them through an artificial intelligence engine that reads each job description as a human would and identifies key characteristics such as what the job title is, what occupation it maps to, what skills are being requested, who the employer is, where it's located, and dozens of other pieces of information that allow us to have a very detailed understanding of what jobs and skills are in demand. We then do the same thing for a set of resumes and professional social profiles that allow us to see the career histories of different people so that we're able to see what existing workers possess in terms of skill sets, what jobs they have, and how they got there in terms of the education and career histories that allowed them to transition into their current positions. And we're able to combine these two sources of data to build a comprehensive data set of the demand and supply for different jobs and skills across both Boston's tech economy and the world more broadly. And so if we jump to the next slide, this allows us to really glean some clear insights into what some of the emerging jobs and skills are within Boston's tech workforce. If we jump to the next slide, that shows us at a first glance what are some of the largest and fastest growing tech-related jobs within Boston. This is important to see what are those roles that you could be targeting if you're thinking of starting a career in the tech sector. These are some of the best roles to focus on because they're both the largest or they're the fastest growing. So if we look on the left side first, we see that many of the largest roles that are being demanded the most in Boston are things like software developer roles or systems and networking roles that are very similar to what Bruce shared earlier in terms of the largest occupations that they see. But I think it's interesting to note that it's, really runs the gamut from development roles to support roles to networking roles. So I think that to even project manager roles. And so I think that there's a really diverse set of opportunities within Boston's tech economy that go far beyond just traditional developer roles. It's also important to look at some of the skill sets that are most in demand, because while it's important to know what jobs you can qualify for or you should be targeting, it's arguably even more important to know what skill sets you should be developing so that regardless of what jobs are in demand today, you know that you have the skills to transition into different roles as they become available. And so some of the largest skills that we see demanded across Boston include things like SQL, which is related to database management. We see specific programming languages such as Java and Python, but we also see some other skills related to project management or quality assurance. And so I think this also underscores that there are opportunities to build skills in a diverse range of fields that are all related to tech. And then if we look at the fastest growing skills, we also see that these are some of the places where it makes the most sense to invest today in your training and learn some of these skills today so that you're going to have more job opportunities tomorrow. And a lot of those fields relate to things like artificial intelligence or machine learning. TensorFlow is related to machine learning. So definitely a lot of analytics and machine learning related skills are important to focus on. But then we also see some security and cloud related skills, such as skills related to Microsoft Azure. And so these are all some of the specific areas that are going to give you the most job opportunities if you learn skills within them today. Then I think the elephant in the room right now that everybody's wondering is what is the impact of COVID going to be on the workforce? Are some of the trends that we saw before COVID still going to hold, or is it going to have a seismic shift on what jobs and skills are going to be demanded moving forward? And what we see both in Boston and in the job market more broadly is that, if anything, COVID is accelerating the trends that we had seen in the past. And what that means is it's accelerating the shift to a greater need for digital skills, and it's accelerating the shift away from more traditional skills associated with, say, sales or account management or marketing or some of those general business functions that are increasingly being automated by the people with the technology skills to do so. And so we still see, even in the midst of this pandemic, strong growth for skills related to IT automation, cybersecurity, cloud, and other fields that are associated with many of those emerging technologies. So even with COVID, it still is definitely beneficial to learn these skills related to these emerging fields. And if anything, it makes it even more imperative that you focus on some of these new and emerging fields in order to have the greatest career opportunities available. And then the last piece that I'll share with you is that even as there is this constant flux of what skills and jobs are in demand, it can seem very difficult to understand, well, how do you become adaptive and agile enough to change your skills and adapt to the new requirements of a labor market that's constantly in flux. And what we have found is that the way to do that is to build a set of foundational skills that will allow you to stack new skills on top of those foundational competencies and more rapidly become proficient in new fields as they arise. And so what that means in the digital economy is that there are really three different types of skills, foundational skills that you can develop in order to be best positioned to be an agile, adaptive worker. The first are human skills. These are things like communication skills, creativity, collaboration. Those are skills that have always been important and will continue to be important. But increasingly, we also see that to be a well-rounded professional, you also have to have some digital building block skills. So that includes at least baseline literacy related to analyzing data, software, or digital security and privacy. And we also find that the most well-rounded people can combine those human and digital skills within what we call business enabling skills. Those are things like project management, business process skills, and others that enable you to connect what you're doing with why you're doing it and communicate the value that you're adding to a diverse array of stakeholders. And if you're able to build at least foundational competencies in each of those three buckets of skills, we find that you're going to be best positioned to adapt to whatever changes may come in the future within the job market. So just to wrap all of this up, the key trends that we're seeing is that new technologies, they can create incredible value for the economy, but they can also create winners and losers when it comes to the job market. And many of these emerging fields, such as AI, cybersecurity, cloud, or others, are bringing disruptive change to the job market and shifting the types of skill sets that individuals need to learn in order to be best positioned for a sustainable career. And that means that focusing on some of these emerging fields, especially if you're looking to work in tech, is going to help you build the skills necessary to enhance your job opportunities and ensure that you have viable career opportunities both today and in the long run.
Thanks,
So
Will.
I'll stop there, but thank you so much, and hopefully can answer any additional questions that come up later in the call.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. So we're going to turn next to Shrenik Soldalgi. He is an ideator, futurist, thinker, doer, and technologist. He heads Wayfair Next, a team that explores far future research and development and pioneers the future of retail and home by leveraging emerging tech and inventing new ones. And his pioneering work in retail extends to an organization called the Kronos Group, which is a global consortium that creates standards. For that group, he's the chairman of a 3D commerce working group. Sounds very cool. A group of leading retail and technology companies exploring the opportunity to accelerate the adoption of 3D experiences by establishing a set of standards and models for creation and distribution. I'm really excited about Shrenik being here today. He's going to show us some cool 3D tech and tell us about what's going on at Wayfair.
All right, hey everyone. Really an honor and pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me on this panel. Thanks for the introduction, Bruce. Today I'm going to talk about e-commerce in the context of Wayfair and what we do and how we're an e-commerce company in Boston. But before we do that, let me try to define what e-commerce is, right? Because I think that needs to be done before we get into it. Because so think of the world before the internet became mainstream, right? So like end of the 90s, the beginning of the 2000s, right? If you had to go and buy, let's say, an airline ticket, or if you have to get groceries, or if you have to buy, say, like toilet paper, right? So before e-commerce became mainstream, you'd have to go to a store, maybe wait in line, figure out what you want, and actually purchase the product and take it back home, right? when the internet came along, what happened was people, the whole part of the internet was to like publish information that was accessible for everyone, right? So then what happened was businesses started publishing information about the products that they sold, like information about the store itself. And then what happened was instead of just showing you the information, they let you buy that product and then they will ship it home to you, right? So that's kind of when that's what e-commerce is, basically letting you avail of these services online instead of walking up to a physical store or going to your neighborhood grocery store. And so just like that, I think the founders at Wayfair, Steve and Neeraj, who are pictured at the bottom left, they around 2000 in 2000 2001 they were basically they thought they'd try to sell furniture online. And so that was kind of their big idea at that time, right? And so they started doing that, and they established something called CSN Stores, which basically was an online store where you could buy, let's say, table lamps, maybe speaker stands, clocks, all kinds of things for your home, right? And they kept working at it, and they kept growing the business. And in 2011, they finally renamed the business to Wayfair, and so that's when Wayfair was like born as a brand. And then in 2014, we became public, and then we're here now in 2020. And so I want to give you a picture of like how the idea came into being in the first place and where we're at today, and the fact that we've actually grown from over the last 15 or 16 years to the company that we are today. So just as a just to give you some numbers, when in 2014 our sales were around $1 billion. Today, like this year, our sales are close to $9 billion, and so every year we're almost doubled, including our workforce. So it's a very, very, I guess, it's e-commerce in general is a very big opportunity where if you do things right, then you're going to be successful. Right? So that's the Wayfair story, and Wayfair was just one of the companies in Boston that's kind of doing this, and so today there are a lot more. And so some of the examples here are Chewy, for example. Chewy is an e-commerce company based out of Boston that's doing the same thing that we're doing for pet food and pet supplies, right? So you can buy pet food for your dogs or cats, and you can have that delivered home. Car Gurus is trying to do the same thing with cars. Imagine sending a car online, right? So that's kind of, today you might be a little, oh, is that, can I really buy a car online? But then, in a few years, you'll be able to do that. And that's going to be a new normal. So that's kind of how, just to kind of help you think about how e-commerce is kind of developing as an industry. Rulala is another company in Boston that's trying to sell fashion accessories and goods. So if you want to buy clothes, shoes, earrings, whatever it is, you can go to Rulala and get that delivered to your home. Toast is another interesting one, which is more relevant today, so I'm sure many of you have experienced this today when you have to kind of order food from a restaurant and have to pick it up, for example. You'd have to go through some kind of a system, an online system, to order your food and like tell you and pay your pay the restaurant your fees and then have that be picked up. And so Toast is the system that's powering some of those type of experiences. And so they're trying to work with some of the restaurants that are local in your neighborhood and have them have some kind of an online presence so you can interact with that restaurant online and order food online before you even get to the restaurant. So I wanted to kind of break down what are the different aspects of an e-commerce company. Like you see, the only thing you see online is basically a website, right? But there's a lot of stuff that's happening behind that website. And so I want to kind of break that down and try to talk about some of the technologies that are being used. So I want to try to do that in two steps, or two areas. One of them is supply, and the other one is demand. So basically, you need some kind of you have a community that's trying to sell something, right? So that's kind of the supply, and there's somebody who wants to buy the thing that you're trying to sell, right? So that's the demand side. So on the supply side, in our case, as Wayfair, we need to figure out, we don't manufacture our own products, we need to figure out where do these products come from, like if a couch or a table lamp or a coffee table or whatever it is, right? So somebody needs to make that. So there are manufacturers that are doing that. And so we need to collect these manufacturers or talk to them and, kind of get them to sell their products on Wayfair. In order to sell these products, you need to have some kind of information about these products, and you need to have maybe a price tag or something like that, or some information that we can present to the user that lets us make a sale. So that could be photographs, that could be a description of the product, that could be price tags. So that's basically the kind of things that the suppliers are kind of sending to who want to get presented on the website, right? And so the website itself is something that is a system. It's a store, and so that's what we call it as a storefront. At the same time, the suppliers are also trying to stock some of the products into a warehouse that where you need to keep the product somewhere, right, before it comes to your home. And so we need to kind of have a common area for that. So that's a warehouse. And so suppliers are basically stocking this warehouse with products, and that will eventually, come to your home. So that's on the supply side. So you prepare this scenario, and you're kind of waiting for somebody to buy the product, right? And in order to prepare the scenario, you have to photograph the products with some technology about photography. You have to kind of stock these products. There's some amount of robotics involved. You have to hold, carry the products to these into this warehouse on a vehicle. You need to also predict the demand for some of these products, right? So that's where data science comes in. That's some of the algorithms. That's where they're used. And then in order to present all these things on the storefront, you need to have a website. The website needs to be backed by information, like the catalog of products. That's a database. You also need to maybe create a mobile application, right, where somebody might want to buy stuff on the phone, right? So these are kind of the technologies involved on the supply side. And then a customer wants to finally buy this product, right? So that's the demand side. So what happens then? So the customer goes to the website, places an order. Now that order has to be processed in some way, right? So there's like a major chunk of our engineers are basically working on this kind of order management system that's taking these orders in, charging the customers for the product that they bought. So there's like credit card processing that needs to happen. Maybe customers have a problem with the order, so they have to call the call center up, and so there's a lot of customer service that's involved in that. And then when everything is good, the order actually needs to reach the warehouse, and the warehouse has to ship the product to you, right? So there's a warehouse, the same warehouse component of it, where the products were stocked earlier, have to now leave the warehouse, right? So there's an entire system where you need to figure out like exactly when these products need to be shipped out. They have to be removed from the, if you've ever gone to an IKEA, you have to kind of get your own products out from these big bins, right? The same thing happens in the warehouse. Somebody has to remove those products from those bins, put them on a truck, and then send it to your home. So again, lots of different technologies are involved here. Very similar to what we had before. Like you need to have a website where the customer can place the order. You need to also have a similar website, but for internal users only. So there are quite a few of those, which are basically for a customer service agent to be able to figure out where an order is. So they're working with the website. They're not going to Wayfair.com. They're going to their own internal website, right? There's, again, lots of robotics and vehicles involved for actually transporting the products from the warehouse to the customer's home. And in order to like make this entire experience happen well, then we have to, for example, predict when you're going to place this order, give you some kind of a forecast of when this thing's going to ship to your home, right? So when you see that 2-day delivery or 1-day delivery or 1-week delivery, there's a lot of technology that actually makes that happen to actually enable that little sticker on the website on a product. It's a lot of work that happens to, actually keep that promise, right? So there's a lot of data science involved and a lot of algorithms involved. And now what's emerging is this concept of augmented reality or virtual reality or 3D, right? Where customers now want to see the product in their space before they buy it. Since there's no physical store, all you can do is use the website or use the mobile app to show information about a product. And what's the better way to do that than to actually place it virtually in your space before you buy it, right? Especially for furniture. So I'm going to show you some examples of that. So that I feel is like an emerging sector in the e-commerce industry. Be it shoes that you want to buy, clothes that you want to buy. Maybe you want to imagine your clothes in your own body. before you buy the clothes, right? So that's, again, AR and VR that's making that happen. So an example of that, yeah, is in front of you, which is, this is a picture of the Wayfair app trying to show you what a piece of, what that chair looks like in your space. That's the right size. That's the exact color of this product, and that's how it's sitting on the floor. And if you see the background here, there is no chair, right? So this is a virtual product. We're showing you this product virtually, and if you place the order, you will actually receive that product in 2 days, and you can actually sit on it for real. So this is, we're going to be showing you some kind of a preview. Again, a lot of technology that's making this happen, sort of 3D involved. So you need to have a version of the product that is similar to the real product. So it's a virtual product. So it's like a digital twin of sorts, if you want to call it that. And so we need to have you need to have every product digitized in some way, right? So there's a lot of work that happens in order to make that happen. An example of how 3D virtual products are also used. So if you look at the background behind me, that's not a photograph. So if you've seen like the Avengers or any kind of science fiction movie, there's a lot of special effects or CGI, computer generated imagery that's used to portray these new beautiful worlds or like new technology or like all the special effects that you see in these futuristic movies. It's the same technology that we're taking from the movie industry and trying to produce imagery that you see on site. So all of the images that you see on Wayfair, most of them are produced with this new technique where we have a digital version of the product that we've made on our own. So we have our own process for that. And using that digital twin of the product, we're able to create this kind of very nice image. I'm just going to play this video. So this is again just a screen share of some software that we use, and you can see we're just moving that bar stool along as if it was a real thing, but it's happening inside a computer. And while we do that, the entire image is changing, and it's looking like it looks very real, right? Except that it's all on the computer. So it represents the real product, but we have a lot more creative flexibility of, do I need to add that plant in the background? Do I need to add this kind of this coffee pot on the table? Maybe I should remove that. Maybe I should have 2 images, when one without it and one with it. Maybe I should have 2 bar stools or 5 bar stools, right? And see how customers react to that. And maybe there's a lot of trial and error that you need to do. That's all powered by machine learning and a lot of algorithms, right? So there's a lot of potential, basically. It opens up opens up a whole new world for producing imagery for products that you want to sell. So that's, again, one piece of technology. This one that I'm showing you now is more, it's further into the future. So imagine if the furniture that you bought at home, you didn't like the color, right? After I don't know, 10 years or so, and you wanted to change that color. What if you could change the fabric or the way it appears digitally? And what I mean by that is, can I use light from maybe the bulbs that you have at home, right? Maybe I can put a mini projector into that bulb, and that projector would basically project a pattern onto your furniture, right? So we're trying to experiment with these kind of concepts where as you can see, the fabric seems to be changing, right? Of course, it's not it's not going to fool anybody right now, but this is the beginning of technology. This is the beginning of this kind of a concept where we have a projector up here, there's a mirror here, and it's kind of projecting a pattern on this. And so we built this thinking that maybe that's the chair of the future. Maybe that's the way people are going to, they want to change their wallpapers, right? It's you want to have one accent wall, or you're bored of your room and you want to just, completely change it. And so this could be one way of doing that, right? And so it's an emerging concept that uses technology to solve a specific problem. And so maybe you can recycle your furniture without having to change it ever. So these are some of the concepts that we're playing with. Some of this is already in front of customers. Some of this is not. So it's that's what we do at Wayfair. In just as a short, I guess last part is that these are all things that play into e-commerce or selling or making your home feel like a space that you love, right? So I think that's what the mission of Wayfair is, and all of these things, are we're trying to do that through these different methods. Yeah. Thanks for your time, and I can answer questions at the end of.
Great. Yeah. If you think of questions, you can write them in the chat if you want to as you go, and we'll be taking them live as well. Very pleased to bring my friend Lee Green, who you see in the picture here with the Tech Apprentice from 2 years ago. Lee's a great supporter of the PIC and the Tech Apprentice program. So very pleased to have him here. He's a chief architect for Blue Cross Blue Shield in Massachusetts. As he will tell you, they're the largest insured in Massachusetts. He's also an active member at Blue Cross of their National Network of Architects and Innovation. Before he ventured up to Boston from Georgia, he led architecture and information management for a company called NASCO. They were doing work with Blue Cross plans then. He also has a rich background in tech consulting for Deloitte and Price Waterhouse in data and technology, and he holds a degree from GIT, the Georgia Institute of Technology. So very pleased to have my friend Lee Green join our conversation.
Thank you, Bruce. And we affectionately call it Georgia Tech down south. So thank you so much for the introduction. And yeah, we've had a great, at Blue Cross Blue Shield, we've had a great rich history working with the Private Industry Council and with the Tech Apprentice program. So yeah, you can jump from this slide because I never like seeing myself in presentation mode. So that's, but yeah, we had a little national recognition with one of our interns there. It's great. So Blue Cross Blue Shield, which is an insurer, and it's I'm going to offer some interesting, and it's very interesting the way we sit in between. You just heard from e-commerce, which is touching every industry. We have a huge e-commerce aspect of our footprint. I'm going to talk a little bit about that as we move forward. But we also sit with heavily in the financial and technology section, so fintech, because traditionally insurance companies have been about managing money between entities to support healthcare. We're evolving beyond that. I'm going to talk a little bit about that, and we also kind of sit across the side of health tech or health IT. Shrinek just spoke about digital twins in terms of furniture and moving objects. We're actually introducing that into medical imaging and scanning because we find that computers and algorithms and big data and predictive and certain artificial intelligence can find cancer a lot faster in a digital version of reality that it would take a physician probably years upon end to be able to see signs of. So it's amazing to see these common themes across the different financial sectors. And that's why I'm so excited to work with the Tech Apprentice program. And Will, what you were talking about earlier, there are so many of these core things that you build upon across your career that move throughout industries. And so, but before we go into more about the fintech side, I should probably define what it is. And so, really, the baseline of fintech is organizations and industries that focus on using technology to deliver and use, to improve the delivery and use of financial services. So basically, think of it at its core. These are organizations and techs that are focusing on managing financial operations, improving movement of money, access to cash, whether that's for a business, for a person, or for another sector of business, such as e-commerce. So when I think about fintech, not every company is fintech, but every company has a financial technology component to it. And so if you look at the deck here, traditionally when you think of fintech, you think of banks, you think of financial investment firms, you think of organizations that are building general ledger software, accounts receivable software. And so when Shrinek was talking about the supply chain of a product, this is really the supply chain of money. So the movement of money and access of money by another entity and between people. I like to think of it, my first introduction to fintech was probably when I was 13 years old and started getting an allowance. And I had to make sure that I knew where my money was, that my mom and dad were going to give me my allowance and that I had a bank account to put it in. So that was my very first introduction to it. I'm still waiting on my allowance to continue, but it ended pretty quickly. So but I think as we talk about where fintech has evolved to, there's no longer just a back office or moving money between bank accounts or someone sending an invoice or a bill and then an individual paying it and then that being checked off in a ledger. That's kind of the traditional model. Financial technology now is really about, I don't know if you all have, if many of you have shopped on Amazon. There's a huge financial tech aspect to that. At Wayfair as well, that you have to, I bought, let's say, you can't see me, but there's a big Wayfair box in my bedroom because I actually just bought a chair that I clicked a button, that money went out there, the product arrived and the money transferred, and it went off without a hitch. So the financial tech aspect of that is really, financial technology is really no longer about just behind the scenes, but it's moving into the forefront of the, and touching a consumer. So I think it's really exciting that, and my career actually did start in financial tech, and now I'm in, and it's gone all over the place, and now I'm back in an industry in insurance that really kind of focuses on that. But if I think about fintech components, you'll find it in education, retail, insurance, gaming. I don't know if any of you play online games, but they're kind of not cheap, and you kind of have to move the money around, and that's all virtual money. So you never actually, there's no coin on your machine where you drop a slot in like when I was a kid and played at the arcade. This is a whole nother world. So, and then, you know, there's certainly in healthcare and for nonprofits and even in professional sports. So financial tech is at a core of many, many functions. If you'll jump the slide forward. A little bit about Blue Cross Blue Shield. We are really focused on putting the individual member and the individual consumer at the center of our focus, making sure that people have access to care, that have seamless, at least the hope there is that you not only have access to care, but you have it at the time you need it. And we also, and then there's also predictive direction as to where you're going in your life cycle. Sorry, within your lifestyle and your journey. I'm a huge consumer of Blue Cross Blue Shield as working there. I have many doctors. I had the luxury of being born diabetic, which means there's a very predictive path that if I am left to my own devices will not end in a very positive outcome. So one of the key roles that our organization does is make sure that not only am I doing the right healthy things to keep myself, you know, on track, seeing my physicians, giving me access to the physicians, but also making sure that I'm understanding the long-term financial impacts of choices I make to my long-term care, and that I'm preparing for the future. Because right now the average projection is at retirement age, each individual should have a minimum of $300,000 to $500,000 in savings planned for long-term care. That's a challenge, but it's also a good thing because it means people are living longer, which means a proliferation of need for medical care. But not to scare you there, but one of the roles of financial tech, especially from the insurer side, is that we're helping our members and the community plan for those types of things in the future. I'm not going to drain the slide because it's certainly, sometimes when you talk about money and dollars and statistics, people's eyes glaze over. So I'm not going to do that for you here. But one of the interesting things I did want to point out is at the bottom right of the slide where it talks about premiums. And a premium is what you pay you or your parents or your employer pay to make sure that you have health insurance. That money is essentially goes into the delivery of care and access to care. If most of you were born, so I'm guessing you had a healthcare experience, at least one. So when that medical event happened, there were multiple physicians involved. There were probably multiple facilities involved, many prenatal care visits, many prenatal care or postnatal care visits after the fact. And so those types of things are areas where multiple organizations come together and money moves through a lot of different entities. And the role of the insurer in that world is to make sure that that is as seamless and frictionless to the individual patient who's getting the care, but also that the providers have adequate payment, are properly reimbursed for their services, that they are also incented to perform services at a high quality. You want to be born right. You don't want to come out broken. So, you know, making sure that not only you have access to care, but it's quality. And so an interesting dimension of this is that for every $1 that an individual pays to Blue Cross, to our company, 90 cents of that, and that goes to the medical, goes right back to the provider. And then the rest is overhead and administrative costs. So this, in an organization where we're in an environment where you're looking to move, a lot of money moves through, you have to make sure that you have all the assets and aspects together because if 90 cents on every dollar goes out the door, you're going to need to make sure that you've got solid investments and have the technologies to drive those investments. Because how many of you, I'm guessing you've all heard of COVID. That's why we're virtual. We would have never been able to predict this coming. Even as recently as January, this would have never been out there. And as you can imagine right now, there's more money going out than there is coming in. So the role of financial technology, not just the movement of money, but the prediction of where it's going, how it's going to work in a marketplace and trending is incredibly important for the work that we do and that this sector does as a whole. So let's advance to the next slide. Okay, so I didn't want to draw too much into this slide, but I wanted to talk through an example. I wanted to go through the COVID example of financial technology and healthcare in the ecosystem and a little bit of what's behind the scenes that's enabling it. And then we'll the next thing I'll do is then jump in and talk about what we're doing in positions and roles that we're seeing growth in within our industry, and in particular, the healthcare aspect of fintech. This is just a graphic you'll see on the top left around the mobile app. We have, just like Wayfair has your mobile experience and your e-commerce, we also have created, or if you're in a banking institute, you're with your bank, whether it's Capital One, excuse me, Santander, they all have mobile apps. We as a healthcare organization have this and a fintech for your, think of this as your financial world and the financial view into your healthcare. We also have an app or multiple applications actually that allow you to find care. This has been exaggerated, really the need to advance in the healthcare world and the financial tech, as the financial side of the healthcare world has never been more pronounced than it has in the past, and it is right now with COVID. There are many, we're seeing a higher demand of, well, we know that you've not been able to go into a physical office, doctor's office for some time. So the access to tele and virtual care. So our applications have introduced capabilities that allow a physician to meet and see you online, so a virtual engagement, an augmented reality in some cases, which you've got also the augmentation of the medical and other information to the side that historically didn't exist and people weren't actually using. And every one of those physicians who is showing up on a screen, there has to be some mechanism to make sure that, one, you can find the physician, you can schedule an appointment, you can actually have FaceTime with them if you need it, or just virtually over the phone. But that's a virtual doctor's visit, which means a claim. This is, if you're not familiar with healthcare, anytime you go to a doctor or have a service rendered, a claim is created. Think about a claim as a bill for services rendered. And so that's how physicians get paid. You visit it, whether it's real whether it's in person, I don't want to say real, they're all real. It's whether it's in person or virtual. The physician performs medical services via either physically or remotely. A claim behind the scenes is generated. That comes to Blue Cross Blue Shield. We pay it out. We pay the physician, and then there may also be an out-of-pocket to the member who's seeing the physician. And nobody wants to go into that blind and be surprised with cost at the end. So there's a lot of technology that goes into the behind the scenes, whether there's the actual experience and the engagement, there is the money and the math and the moving of the accounting behind it, and all the technologies that enable that. But there's also transparency and predictability of outcome. With the COVID efforts going on now, especially within our state, and our state has been incredibly leading edge in terms of how we're addressing this. COVID tests are free for the most part. Let me change that. They're not free. They come at a very high cost. But access to COVID testing within our state has a mandate that there is no out of pocket to the individual, except under certain circumstances that are being discussed in many different legal aspects. But for the example, right now the governor is encouraging people who, even if they're not symptomatic, to get tests in certain areas that are hotspots. Those tests come at a cost, and right now it's currently the insurers in this example that are covering that cost. Think about another fintech example that is not about Blue Cross or an insurer. Think about the banking situation several years back, where the government had to bail out banks because the banks could not support the breadth of their investments and their constituents. So there's there's always a financial burden that needs to be carried. The focus of fintech is to make sure that when these times of, whether it's financial burden or flush with cash or poor without cash in terms of marketplace, that we have the technologies that can manage that, that can predict it in an effective way, so the individual who's being impacted has the information they need to make the right choices. So, you'll see the blurb at the bottom, which has we're investing heavily in terms of artificial intelligence, robotic automation. We're doing a lot in terms of, you'll see chatbots, you'll see all these different things that are looking to change how we engage with the individual community, and it's all driven by the fact that we know we're looking to keep costs low, but are also looking to make access higher, and that without increasing costs. So there's never a dull moment in fintech. Don't just think of it as being an accounting and doing math for the rest of your life. There's a good bit of math, don't worry, it's still there, but it's really about how do we bring technology to accelerate and automate some of those things, and more importantly, bring a degree of prediction to the future, so that we do have, whether it's access to care, access to furniture, access to food. All of those things kind of come into play, because we still live in a world where everything does have a cost to it. And the intent of fintech is to not make managing the cost to it even more burdensome by having manual processes and challenges behind the scenes. If you'll flip to the next slide. Whoops, here we go. So I just want to put a couple of things that are out there that, at least from my point of view in the world that we're looking at within IT, which I will kind of hit a point that I think Bruce made earlier, that while our business is not IT, it's ensuring individuals and making sure that there's coverage and managing providers and hospitals, and making sure that there's access to care. The largest segment of our organization, our largest division in the company, is IT. So we are a healthcare delivery organization and financial management company that is mostly IT. In fact, it's 2/3 IT. So tech is where it's at. And you'll see a lot of the same things that Will pointed out earlier as jobs that are growth roles within our organization. Again, you've got the data block of data engineer, architects, AI and pieces definitely growing at a pace. You saw the positions, the percentages in Boston alone. I'm competing with all of my peers here who are presenting for the same talent. And so that's great for you all who are building the next generation. But there's definitely a high demand in our market space. So these are things to think about as you plan your careers. So the data aspect is huge. Technology is always a large piece, whether it's Amazon or to Google, or the basics of networking infrastructure. And even kind of one of the areas which is a great point of entry that I've found, especially within our organization, is whether it's the desktop support or audio, visual, and virtualization. It's never been more highly in demand, which is, you think about audio visual probably in your schools or in your interns, your places of work now. It's about the access to the screen in the meeting room, having the conference calling capabilities. It's so far beyond that these days with the augmented reality and things that are necessary to deliver work. Audio visual is such a huge growth area. Development, we'll hit on a lot of these. Java, full stack developers, DevOps, Python, all of these things are you cannot go wrong. And for us, what we're finding is these may not necessarily require a degree, but a certification and a focus in these areas. And I think Bruce mentioned some of the organizations and their work that he's working with that kind of can do this. I can very quickly go online and get a Python certification. By quickly, meaning it will take some degree. It'll take some time, rather, not degree. It'll take some time to get it, but it doesn't require a bachelor's or associate's degree to get these certifications. So these are definitely kind of, if you think of the economy of the future, these are areas of acceleration. And security, we'll hit on it. This is, at our organization, security first, security middle, security last. So it's absolutely, there are more and more bad players out there and bad actors in the IT world looking to break into things, and many of that is not powered by people, but by bots and AI. So much here to grow in, and I'm excited to have had some time to talk to you all. And Bruce, I think that's it.
Thank you so much, Lee. Wonderful to hear from you again. Our final presenter is from Vertex, and I want to give a big shout out to Vertex. They hired 40 PIC interns, including 5 Tech Apprentices this summer. And these wonderfully talented Boston Public High School students are just finishing up their first week of a virtual internship. So very pleased to bring to the discussion Maria Elena Morales, PhD. She is the Director of Data Strategy and Solutions at Vertex Pharmaceuticals, where she leads data product and engineering for enterprise-wide data science initiatives. Prior to Vertex, Maria Elena was a consultant in IBM's Watson Health Consulting Services, where she led teams of strategy consultants and data scientists in the strategic definition and delivery of solutions to life sciences and pharmaceutical clients. She holds a PhD in neuroscience from Washington University in St. Louis. She also has an MBA from that school. And in addition, she received a bachelor's degree in neurobiological sciences from the University of Florida. So very pleased to have Marina join the discussion. We've been talking a lot about data, so very eager to hear what she has to say that they're doing at Vertex.
Thank you, Bruce. It's such an honor to be here to speak with you all today. I wanted to just start while we're still on the slide and kind of give you a little bit of an overview of Vertex as a company. So for those of you who don't know us, we are actually a biotechnology company, so definitely in the technology space. And the company was founded in 1989 in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And our headquarters now are actually located in the Seaport in Boston's Innovation District. We have research and development sites and commercial offices around the world. So in the United States, in Europe, Canada, Australia, South America. And currently the company employs around 2,500 or so people at these global offices. We have about 2,000 in the United States. The large majority of that in Boston. We also have a very active, primarily research site in San Diego, and we have a site as well in Providence. We also have our international headquarters in the UK. I'll also just briefly mention our main area right now. We're in the market for cystic fibrosis, so we have 4 medicines that are on the market for cystic fibrosis. But we're also expanding our pipeline into other disease areas, including type 1 diabetes that Lee mentioned, and others. So I'll dive in actually to my slides here. I'll just share my screen if that's all right with you guys. So one main message that I want to deliver is that when we think of technology and how that fits into the world of industry, we don't need to restrict ourselves to thinking about the historically technological sectors. So I think, Will, you did a really great job of kind of, mapping out the roles that exist out there. And a lot of them are around software development, engineering, things like that. But I would propose to you, as digital natives, individuals who have grown up in the era of this world where we have basically supercomputers in our pockets, that every job is a technology job, and every job that you're going to be going into over the course of your careers will have a technology component to it. So I think, if you're on the fence about going deep in computer science, or going for your, say you have a passion for like philosophy, you don't have to make a distinction between what you learn now and what you'll be working on in the future. And I think my background is a pretty good example of that. I got, as Bruce mentioned, I did my undergraduate degree in neurobiological sciences. I did a PhD in neuroscience, and now I lead what arguably is a highly technology-centered group. So with that, I'll also kind of dive into some of the applications of technology in the life sciences. So for those of you who are not aware, which I think is probably a lot of folks, most pharmaceutical and biotech companies have a research component, a clinical component, a commercial component, and then what's called general and administrative. That's kind of the shared operations that exist in all companies. Across all of these different elements, you have the use of technology. And I'll just give you a few examples. So within research, you have things like experimentation, data analysis, methods development, assay design. These are things that we think of at their core as like hard science activities. But every single one of them requires technology and requires, at many times, a deep understanding of the technological underpinnings of the area that you're working on. In addition, there's the clinical group. This is a group that largely focuses on things around clinical trials, ensuring that we can not only pull those candidate drugs, candidate medicines that emerge from research, pull them through, and then ultimately move towards putting them into the market. So activities like trial planning, protocol design, trial operations, which means, how do we make sure that we're recruiting individuals for our trials, that we have effective data exchange between the sites where we're running these trials and the groups that are analyzing the data, all of those sorts of things, as well as biostatistics where the data are actually analyzed. This is all founded on technology. It relies on technology. And now we're going even like further away from what people would think are traditionally technological areas. But, commercial, we talk about marketing. Marketing is a very highly scientific discipline. Market sizing and sales forecasting, these are activities that require the use of technology. Shrenik, I think, did a great job of walking through the e-commerce industry and the revolution that we've seen there. That would not be possible without a shift towards technology. As we move away from brick and mortar establishments, which, we can have a whole discussion about the future of that, but technology is embedded in every element of what we do. And then finally, in general and administrative functions, things like financial reporting. We talked about fintech. Finance is a heavily technology focused discipline. Even in human resources, succession planning requires technology. So all of these things are areas where our team, which is, as Bruce mentioned, a centralized team of data engineers and data scientists that are delivering on business solutions across the enterprise, we would participate in all of these things. So I'm just going to dive in a little bit because I'm not sure if everyone is clear on what data science is. And the best way, I think, to describe that is to describe a data scientist. According to the Harvard Business Review, it's the sexiest job of the 21st century. So maybe I should have been a data scientist. But a data scientist basically comes down to one individual who has this multidisciplinary training and can apply that to business questions. So what are those areas? So first, there's got to be a really well-established foundation of statistics and mathematics. So understanding not just how algorithms work, but how algorithms were developed. That has to be combined with a deep hands-on expertise in programming and computer science. So you take those two things together and you've got, a lot of times a statistician. So you have to kind of add on to that. What else would there be? Well, it's communication. Communication, and I should have added it to this circle, business understanding, business knowledge. So right at the center there is where you would find a data scientist. And this Venn diagram, which by the way is not actually quantitative in any way, I should note that, is used by a lot of folks to kind of highlight how a data scientist has to be a triathlete of sorts. And there are folks who may have more of one, more of another, but as long as you're kind of operating at the intersection of these three disciplines, you are doing data science. And I came up with an overly wordy definition of data scientist. So it's an individual who applies programmatic analysis using algorithms that are grounded in rigorous statistics to address business questions by not only generating, but communicating insights and building data products. And just some example tools that we use, I would expect are actually tools that you guys have already been exposed to. So R, which is a statistical programming language, and Python, which is also a programming language that's used in software development and other areas, are the two main tools of a data scientist. But they also use much, much more kind of beyond that. You know, data engineering, by the way, would fit kind of in this, I don't know if you guys can see that, in this area, between kind of, oh, I even pointed in the wrong area, but communication and programming / computer science. But when we talk about data engineering on our enterprise-wide data science and data engineering team, our data engineers also have to understand the application of the math and the science behind the machine learning models that we use. So quickly, I will go through an overview of the data science workflow. So you can imagine this is the sort of work that we do in different parts of the business. And we repeat this overall workflow, but in different domains. So we might work, you know, say with like finance, or we might work with our commercial colleagues. And every single time we have to start with formulating a high value business question. That's the key. Once we have that question, we can mature that into something that's actionable from a data science perspective. Once we have clarity on what the objectives are, then we go out and acquire data. And we store that data in a way where we can enable fast querying. This is something that perhaps when you guys get to you know, the workforce, will be maybe less of an issue. Because fast querying is something that a lot of us think about as, you know, fast relative to what? Relative to what we had to do in the 90s and early 2000s. So once we have that, we clean the data, we do exploratory data analysis. This gives you an understanding of your data set. And then, and this is a critical element, you extract features of the data. So one simple example is, let's say you want to understand a data set of, you know, individuals in the healthcare system, and you have their heights and you have their weights. Now, a way to engineer an additional feature that could be relevant is to calculate their body mass index, which is the BMI. It's a number that's used often to understand metabolic, you know, characteristics of individuals. So when you combine those two sort of raw features into a new feature, that's feature engineering. And by the way, features here, data scientists just use that to refer to variables. They're like characteristics about the, you know, entities that are in each record. All right, so then we get to the real hardcore modeling work, which is an iterative process where you train, test, and optimize machine learning models in order to improve their performance. So let's say you want to predict something and you have a training data set that has labeled outcomes. In order to know whether or not your data set is doing well, or sorry, your model is doing well, you have to then test the way it's working and calculate and quantify some metrics that tell you about its performance. Once you do that, you can understand the feature importance. That is, of all those variables that we created, which are most important in predicting the outcome that we're interested in. And finally, you save that and do further testing, and you you know, deploy the model if that's what the objective is. Ultimately, at the end of all this, our role is to deliver insights and data products that are going to inform the business and deliver value in each of those domains that I described on the first slide. So I just want to leave you with, you know, I guess two things. One is every job is going to be a tech job. It may not be hardcore in the computer science, developing algorithms and systems every day, but whether you're an engineer or a sales manager, or you're in talent acquisition, or, you know, even if you're a movie director or movie editor, all of those things require an understanding of technology and require, I would call it applied, you know, technology understanding. And then the other thing that I'll say is, because of that, you know, it's important to gain expertise and education in the domain itself, as well as in sort of, you know, technological characteristics that are required for that domain. So try to balance those two things. I think, you know, I've always been passionate about the intersection of business and healthcare and technology. And I think, you know, don't let yourselves be limited by the initial opportunities, because your careers can always change and you can always pivot in a new direction. All right, I will stop there. Thank you for your time and happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you so much, Maria. It was great to hear from everybody, and I think we covered quite a bit of the tech economy today, and heard some great insights and great data. We do have a number. If you want to stick around for a couple more minutes, I know we're running over, but we do have some questions that have come in from students. One is from Christian, and he asks, and this would be for either Lee, Shrenik, or Maria, or Will. How difficult was it for your company to adapt into a virtual state very quickly due to COVID?
Yeah, I can start. So I think the difficulty, you know, it varies depending on the function of the business that you're in. Fortunately, we have amazing technology available to us, like Zoom, where most of the work that individuals do in an office, where they have to meet with others, you know, make decisions, collaborate, that can be shifted to remote work that can be done over Zoom. What's more difficult is maintaining manufacturing and maintaining research functions, which fortunately we were able to do. So I think it required a pivot. It required individuals adopting a behavior change in the way that they went about their daily activities, particularly for those who had to balance, you know, their work responsibilities with their family responsibilities. But overall, we were able to shift and be very successful through this time period, albeit it's been, you know, I think stressful for everyone.
Yeah, I'll echo. This is Lee from Blue Cross. I'll echo exactly what Maria said. It's a pivot around how you choose to engage, managing the fact that we were joking earlier that you're not working from home now, you're living at work, and it's definitely it's a nuance there. But for our organization, unfortunately, I was still living in Georgia back in the days. In 2016, the blizzards, we prepared us pretty hard, at least for our organization, to be ready for working remotely, because many people got stuck and weren't able to get out of their homes. So technologically, we had prepared for this, and so our workforce went from a 70% on-site to 98% working remotely within the span of a week. And so technologically, the tools were there. The Zoom, the Microsoft Teams, whatever pieces were there. It was the mindset and the getting used to a little bit of a cultural shift that you now have. And I can't believe it hasn't happened yet. But like usually a random cat running across the screen, or someone, or the awkward dog barking in the background. So it's more the cultural transition. But I think, and now we're even looking at more technologies to make it a richer experience. Maybe some of the 3D stuff that Shrenik, you had mentioned. But it's really about, it's not really the working remotely and virtually. It's the duration of how long you can work virtually, because there's always a miss of it never hurts to be in a room sometimes to read the room.
Great. I have a question from Vanessa for Will. And the question is, I want to major in the computer science field. I'm still hesitating into majoring, but I'm really into cyber security and software development. I would like to have some advice and learn more about your experience as being an expert in cybersecurity.
Sure, happy to provide some thoughts, and I think, you know, start off by saying I think majoring in computer science is definitely a great field. And I think a lot of people think of it kind of monolithically, that if you start in computer science, then you have to become a developer. But that's not really the case. I think if you go into computer science, you can become a developer. If you go into cybersecurity, there are many different tracks that you can go down in that field. And I think that it does offer a nice set of jumping off points for a variety of different technical fields. So I think that, you know, the first thing I recommend is just thinking through, you know, what are some of the things you like most about.
Will, we're having a little trouble hearing you. I don't know if you can get closer to your mic or.
Oh, is this any better?
It's still a little faint.
Still.
It seems to be cutting in and out where you come through clear and then it sounds like you're very far away. It was totally fine earlier during your presentation, so I'm not sure what changed, but just wanted to, before you continued and we lost what you were saying.
Okay, sorry about that. Maybe I should, why don't I try a different microphone if you want to jump to another question.
Okay, yeah, I'll do that. Thank you, Will. So related to cybersecurity, and this would be for Lee or Maria or Shrenik, can you give an example of how might someone do cybersecurity in your company? What are some roles? What are ways students could think about cyber in your work environments?
I can offer a quick pick because I have security architects on my team. So there are a number of different ways from a cybersecurity aspect of it. If you're interested in programming or learning programming, any organization that is building an application or a mobile app, there is a huge aspect of security that must come with that, because as I said earlier, there's a lot of bad players out there that if you create an app or create an API to integrate one app to integrate with another solution, that's a window and a door for someone to come in. So being able to learn coding practices that focus on security are fantastic. So if you're learning Java code, or even Maria mentioned Python, there are libraries that live out there that may or may not have all the safety controls that they need to insert into a solution. So there's a programming aspect. There's an IT audit role, so that even when you do create assets that are technological assets, whether they're an algorithm, an application, or even installation of a physical, setting up someone's laptop, they are really the role of auditing every aspect of the creation of that technology, who's had access to it, what information has been through it, is a less technical aspect of cybersecurity, but is a critical role.
Great. And Will, maybe we can try you again and go back to the question that you had started to answer from Vanessa.
Hi, does this sound any better?
Yes, definitely.
Oh, okay, terrific. Yeah, so sorry about that. Just going back, I was just saying that, I think that, computer science is a great field to major in, because it gives you a lot of jumping off points into many different fields. So if you're, not sure what technical field you want to go into, or you're not sure whether you want to go into software development or cybersecurity, or even a different field altogether, I think computer science is a great place to start, since you're going to get all of the skills necessary. If we think back to those set of foundational skills we talked about with digital building blocks, human skills, and business enabling skills, I think that's going to give you a great set of skills related to those digital building blocks, which are really going to be critical across any different field that you might want to go into. And you're definitely going to learn a set of in-demand skills that are going to be transportable across a broad number of careers. In terms of just opportunities within software development and cybersecurity, I think that they're both going to present you a diverse set of opportunities, and they're also not mutually exclusive. Some of the most exciting and in-demand jobs that we see right now are those that blend development with security, since there's a large push towards more secure development. And there's historically have not been as many people focusing on the intersection of those two as we probably needed. And so I think that the fact that you're interested in both of those fields could both position you for a great opportunity in either of those. But you could also think about the intersection of the two as well as a career opportunity. So I would recommend both looking at each of those fields and learning more about what specific skill sets are required in each. For cybersecurity, you can go to the tool cyberseek.org to learn more about that, since it's a free tool, provides all of that information. You can see what career pathways look like in that field. But I think for both, just learn more about the skill sets that are in demand, learn more about what types of career opportunities there are, and see which align most closely with your interests.
Thanks so much, Will. I also wanted to thank Maria, who had to drop off, and we're gonna wrap up, I think, and get one more question. We did have a question from Shrenik from Tyler. She says, since COVID, everyone is now at home and doing a lot of online shopping. So I was wondering if there had to be any changes made in the e-commerce field in order to fulfill everyone's online shopping needs?
Yeah, I can answer that. So thankfully, we were in a position where most of our systems, any changes that we wanted to make, any of the core changes we wanted to make to support like high demand, for example, of online orders, we'd already made those changes before this thing hit. So, we were very lucky in that way. And so we were able to handle, I think our sales have really literally gone through the roof, which we were just not expecting that. And I think it's really, really significantly higher than last year. Even the demand, like just the online number of online sessions, for example, just people browsing furniture online, we have to kind of handle that as well, right? So it's not only just the sales, it's the number of people who are just logging on and checking out furniture. So we had all those changes in place already, so that we didn't have to worry about that too much. The biggest change that we had to make was in the warehouses, basically fulfilling these orders, because we obviously had some kind of a delay with if you promised you like a 2-day shipping period, then that would get extended by maybe a day or so, because we were dependent on other third parties as well. So a couple of things that we did to incentivize workers in the warehouse, because that's kind of physically they had to be there, right? So it was a problem being physically located together. And so we increased wages. We made sure that protections and protocols were in place, so that there was no overlap between different, different batches of people coming in. But we also increased wages for warehouse workers, which they obviously appreciated a lot. We had like free dinners for like at least 2 or 3 weeks during the peak times. And so there were things like this where we kind of incentivized, I guess, people and made sure that people were staying safe in the warehouse in order to fulfill the orders. So we had to like adapt to it very quickly, but at the same time, we were successful at that.
Great. Well, thank you, Shrenek, so much for your time and your presentation, and Lee as well, and Will. Great to have you on today. So I think wanted to thank everybody also who attended. We did have a couple of questions that we can follow up on. We may follow up with the presenters. There were some questions around how you keep up with all the technology changes and for you and your organization. So we'll probably pose that one to you. But again, a great kickoff to our series of webinars. I would mention that in 2 weeks, we're actually going to be covering the topic of cybersecurity. And our last session in mid-August will also be covering artificial reality and virtual reality. So we have a bunch of different cool topics coming up. Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful weekend. And again, thank you so much for for joining and being with us today. Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Good luck to
Thanks.
all.
Yep.
Thanks, everybody.